one of them to know that for them or anyone else to think that they are not the ultimate authority in the county is wrong. It's erroneous. It's a mistake, and it's something that has been stolen. And the power grab from Washington, D.C. is an absolute usurpation, and we need to change this. And my deal is, I believe in state nullification, I believe in sheriff nullification, and I believe in jury nullification. And if we're going to take our country back, then we have got to absolutely have all three of those. But the last line in the sand is your county sheriff. And I hope all law enforcement
get involved.
Well, it does, and it does. It requires every citizen to get involved because he works for you, and you've got to let him know what he is expected to do. You're his boss. And so everybody in this country needs to read this book and then make sure that their sheriff knows and understands his proper authority and purpose and his jurisdiction. And plain and simply that the President of the United States cannot tell him what to do, but neither can any of the bureaucracies within the federal government tell your sheriff what to do. But on the other hand, when they're out of line, when the IRS goes too far, when the IRS commits crimes within your county, why on earth would your sheriff sit back and say, oh, I wish there's something we could do about that, but I don't have jurisdiction? Well, that's absolute balderdash. He is responsible for keeping the peace in his county. And, he's there to protect the citizens from the wolves. And it really makes no difference whether the wolf comes from the street gangs or the gangs of Washington, D.C. In fact, the gangs of Washington, D.C. are much more dangerous. And just as James Madison said, the father of our Constitution, quote, there are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments from those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. And that's on page 19 of my book. And so I would put it this way, and I've said this for a long time, and I've taken a lot of heat for saying this, but I don't care. I'm going to tell the truth. And the truth of the matter is, in the way I paraphrase what Madison just said, is this, that the greatest threat to God-given constitutional American liberty is our own federal government. Period.
So the question that comes to my mind right now is, we're talking about some of these sheriffs, whether they know this or not, they should know this, and it almost hinges on negligence if they don't do something. Is there something that the people can do to hold their sheriffs accountable if they've been notified, look, this is your responsibility, it's right here, there's no reason why you can't spell it out in black and white, they can't understand it, and if they don't abide by that, what is the people to do? What are they to do?
To me, that's one of the biggest mistakes that our founding fathers made. They required in the Constitution, when they devised the Constitution, they required that every state and local and federal official, from your dog catcher all the way down to the President of the United States, and everyone in between, is required to take an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. Well, there was no punishment attached for those who failed. They probably would have considered doing such treason. But I think I wouldn't go so far at the beginning of this in our educational process and go in and say, Sheriff, if you don't do this, I want you charged with treason. I think we need to be a little bit patient as we reestablish our country as a constitutional republic and educate our sheriffs. And that's what this movement is right now. It's an educational and motivational project. And first of all, we need to make sure that our citizens know and understand their responsibility to make sure their sheriff is educated in what he's supposed to do. So yes, the citizens have two things they can do. One is, yes, absolutely get involved. This process can no more allow the citizens to be standing on the sidelines cheering as if they're watching the parade. We have to get in. We have to get in the parade. We have to be involved. We have to step up to the plate. And so everybody needs to get active in making sure that we restore our country, and that we're all watching America die, and she's on her deathbed. She can be revived, but it's going to take some real serious CPR, and that's constitutional principle resuscitation. And the other part of that is they can vote the sheriff out, and we're going to be concentrating on identifying who will be a constitutional sheriff. That's the next part of our Constitutional Sheriffs Association, and the project that Constitutional Sheriffs Association will undertake is to identify the constitutional sheriffs all across this country.
Now, the next thing that kind of comes up here, you've got these people that want to be active. They can either just talk about your notification to get active that way. You're talking about running for sheriff. Is it a difficult thing since you've been through the process? If the incumbent or the person that's in power right now as the sheriff doesn't want to listen, doesn't want to uphold their oath, how easy is it to get them out?
Well, it depends. Small town politics is probably a lot easier to deal with, even though it can be quite corrupt at times. But the thing that I would concentrate on there is make sure first and foremost that you take a book and learning materials to your sheriff, that you talk to him and that you ask him if he's read my book yet, and if he's willing to get on board. We're not going to get every sheriff, so don't be dismayed. I mean, this is going to be very similar to what John Adams said about the Revolutionary War. A third of the people supported the revolution. A third of the people were completely apathetic, and a third of the people supported the king. So that's pretty much how this is going to be. So if we get a third of the sheriffs, if we get 1,000 sheriffs on board, even if we get 500, we're going to be able to win this. And I believe with all my heart that if we're going to keep this process peaceful of taking back our country, then we're going to absolutely need the support of our sheriffs. They're going to have to step up. They're going to have the courage enough to risk their jobs for the holy cause of liberty. And that's really what this is going to take. Sheriffs who know and understand their oath of office and their duty to protect our constitutional rights. The evidence that I put in the book is absolutely irrefutable. I've had a few sheriffs get mad at it, but I still have never had anyone, not lawyers, not judges, not radio hosts, not webinar information or participants on webinars, or anyone else, not sheriffs, not cops, not chiefs of police, and I've heard from every one of these groups, no one has been able to show where I've made a mistake in my book or where my book was wrong.
Now, are there court cases like showing the legal precedent for what the claims that you're making right now, or are there some standoffs or some situations that you can refer to that people can do some research and figure out, hey, this is for real?
Well, one is you need to Google Mack versus U.S., Mack v. U.S., and then go to Cornell University. That's the one I like the most. And they reviewed the case, and remember, Justice Scalia wrote the decision, and I can even quote you real quickly a couple of things he said.
Yeah,
and they're in the book, and this is page 15 of the book, and I quote, he's quoting James Madison, and it's a very fundamental decision. The great innovation of this design was that our citizens would have two political capacities, one state and one federal. Now get this is the kicker right here. Each protected from incursion by the other. And where have you ever heard it in any case in history where the state governments and state employees were actually required to protect us from the incursions of the federal government? Well, this case hasn't. I recommend the entire case. It's only about 21 pages when you read the decision from Justice Scalia. He wrote the opinion for the majority. And another point that he makes here, the local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. You see, what I mentioned to you earlier, the evolution is that of thought now is that the federal government is supreme. Well, how did the federal government get supreme over the states when the states are the ones that formed the federal government in the first place? The states weren't formed by the federal government. We are here to tell them what to do.